Hey guys, Valorous Music Tutorials here. Today I'm here to make an updated version of my Komplete Elements video series. A few years ago I made a 7-part video series on Komplete Elements, where I went through some of the products and effects inside of Komplete Elements. I have apparently gotten plenty of people to buy Komplete Elements, which is something I am proud of, but over the years, people have requested I go into more detail, I show how things work. So I'm here to make an updated, better version of my Komplete Elements tutorial, where I go through a few more instruments and effects than I went through before, and I'll go through how to use them, opposed to just playing a bunch of presets. I'll still do that, but I'm also going to make sounds inside these instruments, which I can do now because I know how to use them now better than I did back 2 or 3 years ago. So I hope that you find this new and updated version of my Komplete Elements tutorial to be useful. So first off, before we get into the meat of the video, I would like to show what is inside of Komplete Elements. Well, there's a few things. Komplete Elements ships with the Kontakt 5-player, the Reaktor 5-player, and the Guitar Rig 5-player. All of those players are free, but what you're buying with Komplete Elements is libraries. You're buying libraries and instruments to go with these players. Where if you were to buy the full version of Komplete, you'd be getting the full version of Reaktor, the full version of Kontakt, and the full version of Guitar Rig, as well as many other things. Komplete Elements comes with the player version of those flagship products, which don't have as many capabilities. They're basically just able to play your libraries, which is fine. And they come with a limited amount, or a sampling, of libraries from the Komplete 8 product. So these are all genuinely inside Komplete 8, which you would normally pay $500 for. But here you pay $50 for these, and I gotta tell you, there's some really good libraries here. First, in the Kontakt 5, there's the Vienna Symphonic Library Orchestra, the Abbey Road Early 60s Vintage Drums, the Kontakt Band Instruments, there's more than one, and the Kontakt World Instruments, as well as Kontakt Urban Beats, Kontakt Synth, which contains a few instruments, and Kontakt Vintage, which also contains a few instruments. These are all excellent libraries, I have to say. They're very good. By far my favorite of them is the Vienna Symphonic Library Orchestra, but we'll get to that later. Next, we have our Reaktor library. Next, we have our Reaktor libraries. Our sampling for Reaktor is Aerobic, Metaphysical Function, Steampipe 2, Photon, Oki Computer 2, and Reaktor Spark. It is worth mentioning that Reaktor Spark is sold as its own product, which is something that has long confused me. Reaktor Spark alone costs about $60 on the Native Instruments website. However, you also get Reaktor Spark and Komplete Elements for a total of $50. I don't really understand it, but Reaktor Spark, fully featured, is inside of Komplete Elements, and like everything else, it is extremely good. It is a synth in of itself that should be worth more than $50 that you're getting here just as a part of the package. And again, I'll get to this one later. And finally, we have the Guitar Rig instruments, which is called Kontakt Elements Selection. It comes with 27 high-quality effects, 6 guitar amps, and 19 cabinets. Again, we will get to this later, in which I will explain it in more detail. Altogether, Komplete Elements has 3 gigabytes of samples and libraries, which is excellent, especially because most of them sound very nice and are very usable. I have used Komplete Elements a lot, and it is one of my favorite purchases ever. I've bought lots of virtual instruments and libraries from different companies. Komplete Elements is still the one I am the most proud of. So now that we've gone over what products are inside of Komplete Elements, let's start going over the products one by one, showing off what they do, starting with the Vienna Symphonic Library Orchestra. Alright, so here I have Kontakt 5 Player opened inside of Reaper, and I'm opened to the VSL String Ensemble. This is a part of the orchestral section of Komplete Elements, which is comprised of VSL strings, VSL brass, and the keyboard instruments. Here's the total Kontakt Elements selection you get with Komplete Elements: band, orchestra, synth, urban beats, vintage, and world. I'm in orchestra and VSL strings. And you also get the Abbey Road 60s vintage drums library here. Alicia's Keys is not included. I bought that as a separate product. So there's a bit of history behind VSL. That is a company that makes orchestral software and libraries. Their string libraries are regarded as some of the best. Like, they've been used for movies and stuff. They're really, really, really good. So, the string ensemble here would be a part of software you could potentially pay thousands of dollars for. So if you were like to buy a premium suite of string instruments, like that costs thousands of dollars, this would be one of the libraries you would see inside of that. It's that good. Like, it isn't as extensive as the stuff that costs thousands of dollars, but it's of the same quality. Just take a listen to this from the default sounds. I mean, that's just absolutely beautiful. And in the options menu over here, you can change the velocity curve. This is something I think is important. Right now, it's like at a slow fade. I'm going to make the action a little bit stronger. Yeah, and that was very nice. Like, yeah, without any plugins or anything external, this really does sound that nice. I've done extensive research. I've looked over the years since Komplete Elements was released and since I bought it. There's nothing that compares. There are no string libraries for $50 or even $100 that compare to this. There's nothing. I mean, the only other string library that might compare is the other one that Native Instruments sells. I mean, this is that good. This alone, I think, warrants the $50 price tag that Komplete Elements has. If you're looking for orchestral strings, this is the best you're going to get for under a few hundred to a few $1,000s. It's as simple as that. Alright, so now let's head over to the tremolo, because that's always fun. The monster's gonna get you. You can never get away. That was fun. This is always fun. Get out of my lawn! And another thing you can do is, these are interesting. This kind of changes the sound, maybe the EQ. I'm not totally certain what this is doing behind the scenes, but take a listen. And this I love. You can change this to octave mode. Because you see I'm only playing one note, but it's playing that and an octave above. Probably layer this with a synthesizer pretty well to get a good staccato sound. Like maybe you could layer this with something from Silent 1. That clipped a little because I went over the maximum voices there. Let's play around with the sustain in the chord mode. Again, there's just nothing like this. Alright, so I'm going to move on to something else right now. I'm going to move on to the brass briefly. Hey, so here I am now in the brass ensemble. I don't really use this very much. Believe it or not, I've actually maybe opened this ensemble one time ever since the video that I made a few years ago. I mean, it sounds good. I just don't use this in my music, so I'm going to be more brief with this library than I was with the last one. Yep, and as before, it has this sound thing. As well as the chord thing. And with this is the same as in the string library, I just didn't get around to showing it. You can actually make this like only play thirds. And when we play that again without this, you know, for some easy chords, that's nice. Alright, let's move over to the staccato. Come on, you guys knew I would be playing that a lot. Alright, so I'm gonna call it quits on this library for now, since, again, I don't ever really use this. It sounds good, and if you use this kind of instrument in your music, I'm sure you will love it. But I will probably not open this library ever again in 2014. So, I'm gonna move on to the next library now, which is the Harpsichord. Hello, here I am open inside the Harpsichord. Now, the Harpsichord is fun. I have not actually ever gotten around to getting this inside one of my mixes, but gosh have I wanted to. I do play around with this thing every now and again, and it is fun. This thing is great, just take a listen. I kind of want to go on a fantasy adventure now. That was fun. This also has the chord thing, and as good as it sounds by itself, when you add the octave thing on, this has got to be how it's meant to be played. This is just fantastic. And the cool thing of this library is your mod wheel actually does something here. Take a listen. This would be excellent for layering, by the way, hint hint. And I just want to experiment with the reverb here. That's excellent. Well, I think that's pretty much all I have to show on the Harpsichord, but it is fun to play. I mean, these 3 instruments alone, $50 is a bargain to say the least. No other company offers instruments like this, of this quality, for $50. Nonetheless, all the rest of the stuff I'm about to be showing next. So I think next I'm going to get to the band section. Now the band section is actually kind of funny, because some of the stuff in here is really good. Some of the stuff in here is comically bad. Like, it's bad in the sort of way where if the fake sound of what it's going for is what you want, it's actually quite excellent. But don't use it for the real sound. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a second here. So here I am loaded into the horns in band and then the trumpet section. Like, you see, it isn't technically bad, but seriously, don't try to pass this off as a legitimate trumpet. I mean, if that sound is what you are going for, then this will do an excellent job. But if you're trying to make a song that actually sounds like it has good real trumpets in it, then you gotta go somewhere else for that. That's not what this is. Like, I think this would be better for making some beats. Like, I don't know, I don't really deal with stuff like that very much. But, like, making a rap beat would be pretty cool with this, I think. But again, don't try to use it like a legitimate trumpet. Okay, next. This is probably my least favorite thing in all of Komplete Elements, and sadly the only piano. And again, if a fake piano kind of thing is what you're going for, then this should do fine. But, this is not a real good sampled piano. It's not a replacement for something like Alicia's keys or a real sampled library. I mean, of course, if you happen to be a good pianist, then you can make any kind of piano sound good. But this comes across more as a high-quality toy piano than something a professional would use for music. Yeah, it kind of has a weak sound. I mean, given that I have a really good sampled piano here, Alicia's Keys, I've never found a use for this, but this is technically the one piano that is in Komplete Elements. Take it for what you will. Now, the electric piano, the Mark I Classic, I like this thing. I don't think it sounds like a good Rhodes Mark I, or however you pronounce that. It is not a realistic Mark I. I've heard a good Mark I, Mark II before. This is not that. However, for what it is not bad. If I have one thing against this library, it's that I kind of feel like it takes some notes harder to press down than others. Now, back last time I made a Komplete Elements video covering this instrument, I really wouldn't have known, because I wasn't using a very good MIDI keyboard back then. Back then I was using an Alesis Q49, which has terrible action. Now I use a Roland A800 Pro, which is far more professional. It's more on the level of music that I try to make now, and I very much notice on a keyboard as nice as the one I'm using that this virtual instrument is kind of weird, especially once you get lower. I need to press really hard to get a good sound. You see, because right now I'm pressing as hard as I possibly can. I mean, that's as good as it gets, and when I press normally... I mean, I'm pressing normally right now, and you can barely hear that. But if you can get past that, then this is actually not a bad library at all. It's actually quite good. Now for the organ in Komplete Elements. I know nothing about organs, so I'll play around and you tell me if this is a good library. I would not know. Oh, I like that a lot. The mod wheel is very nice on this. Very expressive. I don't know if a real organ does that. I kind of feel like organs cannot have a pitch wheel, but whatever works. That's kind of interesting. I don't know if a real organ can do that, but to be quite honest, this could work in an interesting mix. Maybe for an interesting electronic song. Oh hey, I'm gonna map one of my knobs to this on my MIDI keyboard. And I'm gonna test out with that now. That's interesting. Yeah, well, that's probably not accurate to a real organ, but that was very interesting, and I'll be honest, I have not done that before, ever. I mean, I'm kind of a little bit inspired because of that. That's fascinating. I did not know that the C3 Blues organ sounded that cool. Looks like I got a phone call. Sorry about that. It is hard to control when my phone will ring or not. But now that I'm back... I mean, I certainly think that sounds fantastic, but again, I know nothing about organs. I do not know what the C3 Blues organ is or what it sounds like in real life. So, you tell me if it sounds like the real thing, but I think that sounds really good. Now, the nylon guitar, I'm actually a guitarist. I've learned the guitar before I knew how to play the keyboard. I've been playing the guitar for a long time. So I think I can rightfully speak on if this is good or not. For what it is, I think it is very good. I mean, again, it has that fake guitar kind of sound, but that can be what you want sometimes. And this time, the pitch wheel actually kind of works, because guitars do this. And by the way, this sound will trigger once you press notes really hard. You can get some real interesting sounds. I mean, sure, it's not a perfect guitar, but as a guitarist, I want to speak out and say that this is a very good guitar virtual instrument. If you play with it right, it can be very expressive, even if it doesn't sound perfect, and maybe you don't want a perfect sound. Like, you have to go with what works with the mix. And sometimes what works with the mix for your song isn't the perfect sound, it's just the right sound. And I have actually used this guitar on 2 or 3 occasions in songs I've put out there, and I really, 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 really love it a lot. It's one of my favorite things in Komplete Elements, to me personally. Alright, let's see what's next. Alright, the bass. I can play the bass a little bit in real life, but it's still not my forte. Oh, and apparently that side is effects, or, moves. So yeah, this one I think is another good one. I mean, I play the bass a little bit in real life. Not a lot, but I know how. And I have played the bass a little bit in a band once. And I think this is a pretty good one. I mean, I think this could be used. Maybe not in the final mix of a super professional song, but this could easily be the placeholder for a bass if you're writing a song and your bassist isn't in town right now. So I like this a lot. Yeah, the drum kits I'll get to soon. Once I get back. It's going to be immediately for you, soon for me. So here I am in the drums for the band section of Komplete Elements, which comes with 3 kits. The first being Crystal, which I'm opened up to here. At the bottom you kind of get low bass tones. And ultimately, I think this is not a bad kit. I mean, these samples aren't the best in the world. I opened that second one accidentally. Anyway, the samples aren't the best in the world. I mean, this is no Vengeance kit, but it is not bad at all. I am not a drummer in real life, so drumming is not my strong suit. All in all, I think it's a good drum kit, though. I mean, as a music producer, I need to deal with drums. It's one of my least favorite things to do, to be quite honest. But this is not a bad kit. Let's see what this kit is like. And I'll be honest, I don't entirely know what to expect. I have never done a lot more than play around with these kits, because I own real drumming software, like Addictive Drums and BFD Eco are two that I own. So, okay, I guess I like drums to some extent. I've paid good money for the ones I have. But because I own real expensive drum kits, and the fact that this comes with a real drum kit, I've never really used these much. But again, they're not bad if these are the sounds you want. Cowbell! I'm a firm believer that cowbell is amazing and everything needs more of it. I apologize for not doing this too well. I have to use slightly different settings to record the sound that you hear in Reaper, and it's causing some delay, so my drumming might not be even as good as normal. But at least we have cowbell. It's an okay kit. Let's see what rolling ice is like. I like this one a lot more than the last one, I have to say. Oh, and apparently these notes up here are automatic drum beats. That's right, I did remember doing that last time. Alright, so that is for the Kontakt Elements Selection drum kit for band. Remember, all of this here was just band, and we've gone through orchestra. Next, I'm tempted to go through urban beats on the topic of drums. There are a few different drum kits here as well. It seems like Komplete Elements has a lot of drums. You should be fine on drums if you buy this. Okay, so here I am open in the performances section inside of Urban Beats. Inside the Diplomat library. Let's try one of the automatic beats up here. That's pretty cool. To save time, I'm not going to look at the rest of these. I know that drums are not the most exciting thing in the universe. So if you choose to buy this product, you can check all of these out for yourself. Next, I am going to look into the Synth library, which has some pretty sweet stuff. Okay, so here I am open inside of Synths, and then pads, and I've opened up Heaven's Sake on the default sound. These are good. I mean, these are interesting. They're kind of very small synthesizers. I mean, there's like a core sound that they have, and you modify that core sound. They're not very versatile at all, but I mean, this is pretty cool. You could probably do something with this. I mean, I don't know about you, but I love that. I mean, imagine sidechaining that, like I explained how to do in an earlier video of mine. I mean, that would just be fantastic. That would work so well. Now I want to show you how to modify this. I'm not going to go to the other two here. I'm just going to stay with Heaven's Sake. Again, once you buy this, which I hope you will by this point, you can check these out for yourself. Basically, each sound has two sides, A and B. And you can control how much of each one you want. Then you have your usual ADSR that basically every synthesizer ever made has had. You have reverb, chorus, and delay, as again most synthesizers tend to have. Alright, I hope that that gave you some interesting ideas. Now that that's done with, we should check out the choir. Kind of a little choir synth. And I'm not going to mess around with this as much as the last one, just what I did with that last one. Every one of these is about that versatile. They're not full synthesizers, but it's enough that you can have some real creative freedom. Enough to make it your own, which is what counts at the end of the day. I mean, I actually don't use those a ton because I have, well, for one, I have the full version of Reactor 5, which has a ton of synthesizers. And I own Razor, which is amazing. So as good as these are, I don't find myself using them a lot, but they're really, really good. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that after letting you listen to that. Let's check out one of the synth drums, just a little bit more of the drums before we move on to Reactor. It's pretty similar to the other ones, not bad. Alright, so I lied. It's actually not quite time to move on to Reactor yet. I want to look through Vintage and World briefly. World has two interesting instruments. One of them is the Cora. I showed this off in my last video, but this is another one of those instruments that is absolutely fascinating, but I haven't really managed to get it into one of my mixes yet. Hopefully someday I will. And this is kind of like the earlier instruments like the Harpsichord or the orchestra, where you can adjust the sound, which I'm actually going to MIDI learn that quickly. Okay, cool. Now I can mess with that. And you can add the octave, fifth, blah, blah, blah. I like the octave on this instrument a lot. Let's turn the reverb up a little bit. I don't really know what that is. yeah, again, I love that instrument. I love, love, love it. And I think there was one more instrument I particularly wanted to show. Yeah, this was it, the steel drums. This was an instrument I was a little bit surprised, but I mean, this is Kontakt, the instrument that contains lots of random stuff that, I don't know, I guess you can decide what to do with. I mean, I don't want to mess around with this instrument a lot. I just wanted to show that it's there. I mean, there's some weird stuff in here for you creative types, like myself. Alright, so... and then I want to show off the vintage. Okay, so here I am in vintage, and I was in Digital Machines and the DX7 EP. Now, I'm not really old enough to have ever played these firsthand, so again, I don't know if these are true interpretations. But for the vintage instruments, some of them are really good, some of them are very, very comically bad. I mean, some of them I don't think most anyone could use, but, I mean, this, for an example, I think is a very excellent instrument. Anyone who watched my previous videos on Complete Elements may remember that. That's a cool little tune that I made with this instrument that I think was pretty neat. Yeah, as with all these instruments, you need to be careful of clipping. Yes, I'm sure you can tell why I like that instrument so much. Alright, let's move on. Oh, cancel. I don't want to... Alright, I guess I will not save changes to the instrument. I don't know what that was about. Here's one of the examples of one that is, well, you know. I mean, I guess if that cheesy sound is what you're looking for, that's fine, but my goodness. Yeah, not terrible, but, you know, cheesy. Let's do one more here. Let's check this one out. Oh yes, here's another one of the really cheesy ones, but again, it actually, I kind of like this one, I have to be honest. I mean, come on, that is really cool. Alright, and there's lots and lots of stuff. I'm not going to waste either of our time by going through all of them, but if you buy this, you can play around with this stuff, and it is fun. So that is what you get in Kontakt Elements Selections. The Abbey Road 60s drums I will show at the end along with Guitar Rig like I did last time, because those two go together well. And then I'll show this on its own, comparing it to a few of the other drum libraries I own. I mean, I own BFD Eco and Addictive Drums, which are very nice, but this really isn't too much worse. I mean, it has a different sound, but it's every bit as usable. And you'll see what I mean. I'm going to do this towards the end of these videos, but you'll see what I mean when I get there. So that was the Kontakt Element Selections that you'll get with Komplete Elements. Only one part of many that make this worth $50. Next, I'm going to be going through Reactor 5, which I actually own the full version of Reactor 5, so I'm just going to go through the specific instruments you would get with Komplete Elements. Many of which alone, such as Reactor Spark, as I said before, is worth the $50 alone. Very literally, Reactor Spark is sold for $60 alone. So, thank you for watching this far, and I hope this has been useful to you. I will see you in the next video.